So I just really implore people that maybe if they're having struggles with their accounts, maybe they find that they haven't been very successful in using their accounts, to, call up your administrator and just have them walk through the plan design, the benefits, so that you can really use it. It can be a benefit when you know how.
Welcome, listeners. Today, Jolene and I are happy to have Prisilla joining us. Prisilla oversees operations for our reimbursement products. That's FSA, HRA, HSA, and she keeps everything running as smoothly as possible. She has this great understanding of the products and balances that well by focusing on how we can help people, from a customer service perspective, understand how to use their reimbursement benefit.
Hi, Prisilla.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, of course.
You are a pleasure to work with as a colleague, and we're really happy that you're here to chat with us. Today, you're going to share something you've learned that has been so helpful. You tell everyone about it. So we're going to dive right in. One of the topics you mentioned you wanted to focus on is eligible expenses, which aren't always eligible.
Yes.
So tell us more about that, because as consumers of health benefits, I think this is something that a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So yes, I obviously I wanted to talk about this because I thought that it was the most confusing part, a common reoccurring sort of question, and it can be confusing. So if we're talking about terms like FSAs, HRAs, HSAs, obviously for those who don't know, these are pre-tax funded accounts and they can be used for certain expenses. Now, first things first, and I know this might seem a little obvious, but you want to know what kind of account you're enrolled into, because that's going to make a huge difference. So whether it's speaking to your employer or it's speaking to the administrator that you have for your reimbursement account, or reading through maybe any source materials you may have received when you signed up, that is first thing. You want to know what kind of account are you enrolled into. The next part of that is, when I think of eligible expenses, I think of them almost in two categories. We have, is the item or service eligible per the IRS? And can the funds be used for those eligible expenses? Now stay with me. An example of this is the IRS considers office visits as an eligible reimbursement account type of expense. However, let's say you are enrolled in an HRA account and your eligible expenses are limited to medical services that apply to your medical deductible, while the office visit itself can be considered an eligible expense by the IRS. If it did not apply to that deductible, it's no longer eligible. So you have to understand really how your account is set up. And that example, I used HRAs because there can be certain nuances with the eligible expenses that you don't find as much with FSAs. Those tend to be a bit more straightforward. Another example.
Hold up.
Sure.
So this is your point about health reimbursement arrangements, health savings accounts, and FSAs, flexible spending accounts, is that all three of those different types of accounts could reimburse a member subscriber for medical services. But the IRS has different rules and regulations around what you can deduct. And then there might be some plan design things that could change that as well.
Yes, exactly. Well, and I find too, because there's oftentimes that tie-in with medical. So we know medical is incredibly confusing. So now there's an account that, while it genuinely can be super beneficial for you to have that set aside for maybe some unforeseen or foreseen expenses, there is a lot to it. It's subject sometimes to how you interpret terms, right? So how do you define covered? Some people may say, well, my insurance didn't pay towards that claim, so it's not covered, right? So there's a lot of just terms and ideas that can be open for interpretation.
I think two things I wanted, I don't want to put you on the spot,
Mm-hmm.
but grace periods and carryovers,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think those are two terms that are, a lot of us see when you're reading through these. And if you don't
Mm-hmm.
understand the nuances behind that or the dates and the numbers, you don't want to leave money on the table. So if you could speak
Right.
briefly about those
Yeah.
elements of these plans too.
Yeah. So yes, there, I contemplated how much I wanted to talk about that piece, or even if at all, to be honest, because not every account will have a grace period. Not every account will have a rollover. And what does that exactly mean? But yes, there are, with the accounts, there's some additional plan designs that are, really meant to help you out so that you aren't losing out on your money. So whether it's that your plan is designed so any leftover money can roll over to the new plan year, allowing you to use that those funds for new expenses that have come up, or you're talking about a run out, so a window of time after your plan ended where you can manually submit for those expenses you incurred previously. So, go for it.
I have a question. When you talk about run out,
Mhm.
so if my plan year is 1/1 to 12/31/2022, and I have a window of 3 months where I can use those leftover funds. This is where I think things get confusing, but it's possible that you're going to help me clear this up at this moment. When I ask to get reimbursed January 1 of 2023, between January 1 of 2023 and March 31 of 2023, from money that I put in there in 2022, the expense also has to have been incurred in 2022. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that was actually going to be my second example. You're just so great.
What we're talking about is a grace period?
Can be. So for example, grace period and run out are very similar. It's basically where you're given a window of time. The difference is, when did the data service fall?
Mm-hmm.
So, the second example I was going to talk about was, let's go back to that office visit from earlier, right? Like I said, the IRS states office visits, they're eligible in general as an expense. And let's say you get a bill in the mail for that office visit. You didn't pay it at the time, or you only partially paid it at the time you went, so you get a bill in the mail. And let's say you have your card, your FSA card, and you call up their billing office and you pay the bill. Here's where we may encounter an issue. So let's say you have a run out, and let's say you are in your new plan year. So that card is only going to hold and know funds that you are currently enrolled into. Okay. So let's say you got your bill today and the service happened back in December of 2021. So that's a data service that happened in an old plan year.
And your card is current plan year.
And your card is current plan year.
Even though all the cash is sitting in the virtual wallet.
In the virtual world, yes. So now you are going to encounter an issue because you are possibly using the funds incorrectly. So in these cases, it is possible that now the expense is no longer eligible, although the office visit is eligible, although you may have access to funds from the previous plan year, although you may be in a run out that is still active, you have used the incorrect funds. So that's why it's really important to know what account you're enrolled in, the plan designs around it. If you get a bill in the mail for a previous plan year, call up your administrator, say, hey, how do I possibly get funded for this? We'll go through that with you.
That's a really good point, because I think that's something, I still struggle with the cards because the plastic is helpful in some instances when you have it to do a swiper to make a payment, like with my HSA all day. Love that card. right? That it works differently in an HSA situation to have that plastic and use that for eligible expenses and make payments with those. It's much harder sometimes, especially when you get around the ends and starts of plan years and the dates of the bill and how those, how you're paying for it, either requesting reimbursement with a form or doing something in a portal to request reimbursement versus swiping the card, which feels innocent because the money in your brain and your virtual wallet, all that cash is there, but the card only knows to pull from the year you're in.
Yes.
This is why people get very upset on the phone. Yes. This is not easy.
Yeah. No. And I feel like I like to say I've had a few different lives in the medical industry. I originally came from the provider world. Then I came from medical healthcare, and now I'm in reimbursement. And I did find a trend in terms of when people feel the need to contact customer service. I find that usually oftentimes people, to them, it's second nature, usually to contact their health insurance prior to going for certain services. Is this covered? Is my doctor a network? What's my copay? Do I need an authorization? And if it's not the member, sometimes it's the provider. They'll tell you, I have to submit for this. Your copay is going to be this. With reimbursement, it's very much you have to know, because, oftentimes maybe the vendor understandably doesn't know the provider's office that you went to, because they can be complicated. They can be very unique. So I just really implore people that maybe if they're having struggles with their accounts, maybe they find that they haven't been very successful in using their accounts, to, call up your administrator and just have them walk through the plan design, the benefits, so that you can really use it. It can be a benefit when you know how.
Yeah. And ask, do you have rollover, run out, a grace period? And what is the window for that thing? And then what does that mean for me and how I use my funds? I feel like those are the three: rollover, run out, and grace period. I feel like those are so important because it's super frustrating as the holder of the card, the holder of the benefits, feeling like you're using it right, and then not understanding why things get rejected that really just don't mentally make sense because your virtual funds exist.
Exactly. Totally. Yes. And keeping all of that in mind, eligibility tools are amazing. For the Nova members, we have one on our website for our members. So definitely use those resources, or administrator, I'm sorry. But yes, a lot to know, a lot to encompass and make it eligible. But yeah.
Yes. And don't feel alone if you're just feeling lost in the confusion, because this is such a common, issue.
And like it was said before, this is what we do all day long, so it can be easier, obviously, for me to speak on. This is what I do every day. Even when I'm not working, I'm probably thinking about it.
You stop that right now.
I know.
Well, thank you so much, Prisilla. I'm sure, I have a feeling that we'll be reaching back out to you, because we could have an entire series just on this subject alone. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It was great.
This podcast was brought to you by Nova Healthcare Administrators. Between our colleagues and business partners, we know a lot of kind, smart, and thoughtful people who we convinced to share their tips with you.
Don't forget to leave us a review, give us a like or star, or subscribe, but more importantly, please share. We'll find the insiders and you share it with the outsiders. Is there something you've always wanted to understand better? Let us know on Twitter at UNDRTheCoverage, or send an email to podcast@novahealthcare.com.